Today we are going to practice multiplying decimal numbers. Here we go. Okay, the thing about multiplying decimal numbers is that it is the same as multiplying whole numbers. We can use all the same strategies. So far we have used a half double strategy or double half. We've used partial products. And we've also just simply discussed that multiplication means making copies of things. We can use all of these same strategies when we're talking about decimal numbers. Okay, so all of the multiplication strategies you know for whole numbers, you can use them for decimal numbers. Let's try some examples. Here we have 4 times 4 hundredths. This very simply means 4 copies of 4 hundredths. So I'm going to need 4 hundredths plus 4 hundredths plus 4 hundredths plus 4 hundredths, which is going to give me 16 hundredths. So if you're really good at reading decimal numbers and you can actually say them out loud when you're making your copies, it's going to really help you understand where the decimal point lives in your answer. So if I'm making 4 copies of 4 hundredths, then my answer is going to be 16 hundredths. So without even having to think, well, where does my decimal point go? You just say the number, 16 hundredths, and there it is. Here's another example, 9/10 times 3. I know that multiplication has the commutative property, which means I can switch the order. So I can think of this as 3 copies of 9/10. So 3 copies of 9/10 should be 27/10. 27/10 looks like this. My last digit's in the tenths place. So 2 and 7/10, 27/10, there it is. So if you're doing level A questions, you will always see a whole number multiplied by a decimal number. If you're doing level B or C questions, you'll see 2 decimal numbers multiplied together. Don't worry, it's very easy. I need 3/10 times 3/10. It's kind of hard to think of this in terms of copies because 3/10 of a copy is not something that we can easily visualize. But don't worry. I know that 3 times 3 is 9. 9 has to be in my answer. So for a second, you can just forget that these are decimals and just get the digit down first. 3 times 3 is 9. Now let's adjust because this isn't just 3. This is 10 times smaller than a 3. And this isn't just 3. It's 10 times smaller than a 3. So overall, my question, my numbers are 10 times 10 smaller than their whole numbers. So this cannot be a whole number 9. It's going to have to be 10 times 10 times smaller. So my decimal is going to have to be here. So 9 hundredths is my answer. Okay, so when you're multiplying 2 decimal numbers, my best advice is to first forget the decimal, multiply the digits to find your digits of your answer, and then adjust the position of the decimal to account for the size of the numbers in your question. Here we can just do 2 copies of 4 and 5/10, but I'd like to show you how the double half strategy works well here too. Whenever I have a 0.5, I really like to double it because then it makes a whole number. So 4 and 5/10, if I were to double that, I'd get 9. And then if I were to halve the 2, I'd get 1. My answer's 9. So maybe doing the double half is overcomplicating it, but it's just to illustrate that the half double strategy does work in decimals too. Okay, now it's your turn. Pause the video, try these questions, and come back, check your answers. Here I need 7 copies of 5/10. 7 copies of 5/10 should be 35/10. You can also just do the strategy I mentioned earlier and forget the decimal at first. 7 times 5 is 35. But because this 5 isn't 5 ones, it's 5/10, I need to make my answer 10 times smaller as well. Here, 4 times 1 and 2/10, I can just simply think 4 copies of 1 and 4 copies of 2/10. Maybe you're thinking 4 times 12 is 48, and then you're just adjusting your answer to put the decimal in the proper place. So many ways to get to the same answer. Here, I am going to just think 12 times 3, which is 36. But I know my answer can't be 36. I have to adjust where the decimal point is. Here, I've got a number that is 10 times smaller than 12, and here I've got a number that is 10 times smaller than 3. So instead of 12 times 3 being 36, I'm going to have to adjust by 100 times. That's 10 times 10 times smaller. 36 hundredths. Here I've got 5 times 8. Maybe I'll actually do the double half here. I like to double my 0.5 to make it a 1, and then I will halve my 8/10 to make it 4/10. One copy of anything is just itself, so 4/10. Maybe you used a different strategy to get there. Maybe you thought 5 times 8 is 40, but then you had to adjust the decimal to put it here. Either way, that's the answer.